Right, good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's installment of Business Day SME Matters in partnership with Nedbank. This is a hybrid event, so I'd like to welcome our audience that joins us in person today at the Empire Conferences and Events venue, but also our audience that is joining us virtually. To introduce myself, my name is Zinati Guma. I'm a business news anchor at Business Day TV. I also MC events and I also moderate panel discussions, and I do have the honor of moderating today's discussion. Right, just to get housekeeping out of the way to our online audience, I would like to encourage you to interact on the live chat and to also post questions. We will have a question and answer session after the panel discussion. So you can just post your questions, interact there, and also the questions that you do post, make sure that you direct them to the relevant people. And also to our audience that joins us in person, there will be a mic available during the question and answer session. So when you do have a question, just raise your hand and you can direct your question to the relevant person. All right, just to set the scene, let's get down to the business of small businesses. Of course, you know that this is one of the most important sectors in South Africa's economy, as a lot of jobs are absorbed by the sector. And I just want to set the scene for you with an analogy. I'm sure a lot of us have seen it. It comes out every festive season. So around the 16th, when New Year's is coming, people are just like, waiting for this auntie to come out. So this is a meme of a woman that is stepping into a new year, and she is leaving her challenges and woes and all the bad things behind her in the past year, and she is stepping into this new year with a bag full of goodies, full of hopes, and full of goals that she wants to achieve in the next year. And she actually became quite popular during the pandemic because a lot of us, every few months, we were hoping, with every announcement that the president was making, we were hoping that we would leave the pandemic behind. And I actually liken her to small businesses because they were the hardest hit during the pandemic. And every time they were hoping that they would leave the disastrous effects of the pandemic behind so that the normal course of business could resume. But even as we did leave the worst of the health crisis behind year on year, businesses were still going into the new year with new challenges, lingering challenges from the pandemic, and obviously the new challenges that we are seeing right now in the economic environment. And of course, that includes the higher costs that businesses have to take to run their businesses, but also the higher interest rates that they now have to pay to their creditors. And they also are faced with constrained consumers that are also dealing with their own challenges, high inflation, high interest rates, that are buying less of the business's products and services. Because a lot of things at the moment are fighting for the consumer pocket. Busima Vuso, the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa, actually penned an article on Business Day last year, about a year ago, saying that a November 2020 study by FinFind found that 42.7% of businesses had to close, and those that are still standing are probably ill-equipped for the further pain that the high levels of inflation will bring. Apart from their own operating costs increasing, fewer customers will be able to afford their products or services at higher prices, squeezing profits. So with small businesses being that lady that is leaving the past year behind, going into a new year, going into a new chapter, some businesses are still carrying challenges, but some are carrying new strategies, revamped business models, and new lessons in there as well. So we're going to spend the next hour unpacking that picture of what small businesses have faced, what they have overcome, the lessons that they've taken with, how they're navigating, and how to be better equipped to deal with the current challenging environment. And on that note, let me introduce the panelists for this morning's discussion titled Business Day SME Matters in partnership with Nedbank. On my left, I have Alan Shannon, who is the Executive for Small Business Services and Private Clients at Nedbank. And next to him, I have Rahma Solomon, the founder of Vortex Design Solution. And next to her is Greg Walsh, who is the CEO of G&G Productions. Greg, if it were up to me, your introduction will be with you walking in with DJ Shimza and Zex Bandwini with the summer playing in the background. That's in reference to one of my favorite events that G&G Productions does, Gunye. Thank you so much to our panelists for joining us. Of course, as we get the show started, I would like to get opening comments from you so we can get insights on the different roles that you are playing in the discussion. Of course, starting with you, Alan, outlining the role that Nedbank plays in the small business ecosystem.
Yes, well, of course, as a bank, I think I know we're not necessarily everybody's favorite industry, but I think banks play a pivotal role, specifically commercial banking, in facilitating the growth of small business. And I think specifically seeking to be there when small businesses go through some of the hardships which small businesses in South Africa have had to face. You've touched on of COVID, we've had floods, we've had riots. Of course, we still contend with load shedding. And so the role of banks is to sort of try and create an environment at least that helps businesses stay in business, sustain themselves, and hopefully, as I guess we'll hear during the course of this morning's discussion, grow. And I think it's a privilege for us to be part of this process. And I think today specifically, we didn't want to just have the bank's understanding of things being pulled through to the small businesses. We thought we must get entrepreneurs into this discussion that have been through these hardships that can share some of their stories. So privilege for us to be part of this process.
All right. Well, let's get to the entrepreneurs. And Rahma, the floor is yours. Explain your role in that small business ecosystem and the gap that you have sought to fill in that market.
Thank you very much. So, Rahma here from Vortex Design. Today I'll be talking a little bit about just the challenges we faced in the building construction industry and interior design. So we work in commercial and retail environments, which are very, very strenuous, especially during the COVID times. You can imagine that all of businesses closed, all the shopping centers weren't accessible, and then everyone went home from their offices. So just a little bit about marketing and sales and how we actually navigated our operation through that, that I'll talk about today.
All right. Well, Greg, talk to us about the role of your business and the vision that you had when you started out as an entrepreneur in the event space.
Yeah, so I started in this business when I was 18 years old. I was a first-year student at the University of Cape Town. And just by chance, we had a UCT fashion show, and I met Gareth Cliff, who was the MC at the time. And a week later, he invited me to an under-18 party that he was DJing at with the promise of we'll go out for dinner and have a good time afterwards. And I met another guy called Gareth, who was the organizer of the party. And so we formed a business that has continued 21 years. I think at the time I was just fascinated by how cool it was to organize parties. And it was really a stepping stone because I had my vision actually on the banking industry. I wanted to be an investment banker. I was studying finance and accounting at UCT. And this was really like, make whatever money I can because I needed to during my studies. I wasn't fully supported so that I could then go and start my career in banking. And I did go and start my career in banking, and we're not going to mention the competitor's name on the floor here, but it was 2 years between London and Johannesburg, and I just got pulled back to what I'd maybe not recognized I'd developed such a passion for, which was giving people exceptional experiences and, growing a business in that space.
Yeah. Rahma, actually, what was your journey to starting? What did that look like? Because I think your evolution, even since COVID, has been quite interesting. So just talk to us about the start of your journey in entrepreneurship.
So I actually worked in interior design for many years, 20 years, going on 20 years. I worked really hard at college and I wanted to be part of those big corporate companies, the Stephen Anthony's of the world, the ones that really work globally. And I'm a top achiever. I'm an A student, right? And I worked and I thought, I'm going to get into one of those big companies and I'm going I'm going to grow to the top directorship. But I worked for many years, and I kept getting into these situations where these companies would just put you in the corner and say, you know, if you just draw hard, you just work hard, we'll eventually give you a position. And positions never came, and positions never came. And I saw my colleagues just grow past me. And I started to feel like maybe this isn't going to work out. And I remember working for one gentleman for 9 years. And he made promises. He said, just stay here with me. I'm going to give you a directorship. I'm going to make you my partner. And I worked for him for 9 years. And then I went to him and I said, right, sir, I'm ready to be your partner. Let's sit down and discuss business. And he looked at me and he said, I will never make you a partner. And my heart broke. My heart literally broke. And I went onto the internet that night. And there was one thing I could do. I could do my job. I could design anything. I could project manage anything. I could build anything. I knew everything about aircon and fire and electrical. But what I couldn't do was find a client. We were a perfect team. He would find the clients. I would do the business. He would, do the golf course talks, and I would literally draw it up, and I would project manage that thing within time and within budget to perfection. But I didn't know how to do sales. I didn't know how to approach anyone in the street. I was shy. I was brought up in a very conservative Muslim family. Girls didn't talk to just anybody or say anything, so that was not my forte. But I had to learn, because what would I do in the big bad world out there? Because I was convinced that deals were done in cigar bars and on the golf course. That's what I was taught. In building construction, this is a man's world. I don't belong here. And I had been programmed for 30 years that this is how the world, that's just what it is. And Rahma, you do not fit into this world. There will be no space for you. So I logged on that night, and I quickly, how do I build a website? How do I register a company? How do I do marketing and sales? And I Googled and I Googled and I Googled until I learned everything I could. And so I wanted to try. I was like, okay, now I know everything. Let me go do this. And nothing worked. And I built a website and nobody came. And I launched everything and nobody came. And I made a logo and nobody came. And I tried this for an entire year. And in 2015, I thought, you know what, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I need to go back to work. Maybe I need to just give up and start again, because this world is not made for me. But I found a business coach. And he said he's going to teach me about marketing and sales. And I literally had to learn how to speak. I had to learn how to sit up straight. I had to learn that it was okay to say, I am Rahma from Vortex Design Solutions, and I can assist you by building your building and your space. And so little by little, I developed learning how to pay for a coach. I swiped the last 1,000 Rand off my credit card to pay for a coach to literally teach me how to be a business person.
Yeah.
And so every single year on year, I had to learn how to run a business, run an interior design company, and actually grow. And I was really things started to work. And one by one, I got my first client. I got my second client. But it was always a referral business. People always just, I did one job, and they referred me to another job, and they referred me to another job, all the way up to 2019. And then the president made his speech.
All right. Well, let's get to that. Let's get to that. I mean, lots of really important lessons from what you said about being proactive and just learning stuff that you don't know until you are an expert, but also the importance of mentorship. You mentioned a business coach there. That's something that we will delve deeper into later. Alan, I want to come to you. COVID hits.
Yeah.
Of course, in an environment that has always been a roller coaster ride for small businesses, in which a lot of them fail within the first year. Yeah. So it hits, and of course we know that people are running out of money. What were the things that they were most worried about during that time?
That's a really good question. And of course, it was a March in 2020 when the speeches started. As bankers, we were sent home as well. We were essential service, so we needed to carry on working, of course. And given that I'm part of the small business community within Nedbank, we were very much concerned. I mean, if we think about the industries that are represented to my left, we've got entertainment, events, we've got office space. Neither one of those two industries could have, there was big fears around these industries in particular. So I think we've got a couple of miracles sitting alongside us. Yeah. I think for us, what we were hearing the small business say was a couple of things. One, we're obviously worried about the sustainability of our businesses because, of course, business just shut down. I mean, we've seen what happened to actual growth. I think the country retracted, I forget the percentage, but I think throughout the full year, the country went backwards about 7% in GDP terms. In the small business environment, were perhaps those most hit by that. So in the small business environment, that growth, the retraction in growth would have been a multiple. The other thing that small businesses said they were most worried about was the well-being of their employees and their ability to be able to sustain paying their employees whilst the pandemic played out. So, I mean, those were, I guess, the two predominant fears.
Yeah.
I think no one would have, I guess, sensed at the time when we were all sort of shut down in the month of March that it would have played out for quite as long as it did. In fact, we were chatting a little bit earlier. Some of the, I guess, remedies to try and sort of help small businesses through that environment also came a little late. But people like, for instance, the South African Futures Trust came to the party and helped us at least provide some capital into some of the small businesses to help sustain the payment of salaries to their employees. But it was a torrid time. I think everybody was obviously very worried. Us as banks, of course, I think had the ability to sustain it. But the small business sector in particular are the ones I think were most significantly hit because small businesses tend not to have the mountains of resources that the large corporate sector has to sustain them through those type of times.
I mean, I will go back to a point that you made and try to find out from you what banks could have done better at that point to support small businesses, of course, as you also try to support them through these new challenges. But coming to you, Rahma, you stopped to 2019 and then obviously 2020 comes. What was your biggest wake-up call then?
I think if I had to pick just one thing, and there were probably 25 things, my biggest wake-up call was when I fell ill and my husband fell ill. We were in the first wave of COVID, and I'll never forget the day, he left the house and he collapsed in the road in front of our house, taking out the dirt. He had been suffering from, chest, he was tight, but he was the man of the house, he was playing it strong. But he collapsed and I immediately rushed him to hospital. He had fallen ill with COVID, and he went in for 3 weeks on a ventilator. And then I had caught COVID somehow. But this was when everyone was scared. Nobody wanted to come close to me. People were dropping food at my gate. And I was laying in bed. I had headaches. I couldn't breathe. I was literally all alone. And I had to make peace with the fact of, what is going to happen to my business now? Who's going to look after everyone? Who's going to phone the clients? 3 weeks is a long time. If you are the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, no one's paying the clients, no one's phoning the suppliers. And I literally had to just phone my friends and family, phone my staff, ask everyone to take over and support me and literally come together on my behalf and trust that they had the skills and the knowledge to get through everything for me. So making peace with the fact that if I had to choose to be anyone that I could be in my business and do anything that I could, if I could step back and really reassess my entire life and my entire business, what would I do when I get out of bed? If God gets me through this now, what am I going to do next? And it made me sit and think, maybe I was doing this all wrong. Maybe I was trying to push my products onto people for no reason. Maybe I was trying to sell them something they didn't need. And I made a decision that when I get out of this, if God gives me back this business, I'm just going to stop, be very calm, listen, ask people what do they need, and only give them just that and no more.
All right. Very, very interesting point that you make there of the reassessment that you had to make. Of course, we're going to be getting more insights a little bit later on. But on your side, Greg, a lot of alarm bells are ringing for businesses at this point, particularly in events. And I think at this point, it's not even a matter of sink or swim. You are sinking. You cannot swim. The tide is high, and you have to wait till the tide is low again. What goes on in the sinking?
So, I think for us, there was the first 3 weeks, and I want to call that it was a torrid time frame, but it was a sort of the COVID honeymoon. We were all behind the prayers, and everyone was like, "No, we need this." I was donating money to that the fund that was set up at the Oppenheimers and Rupert's put in. I'm like, not their amounts, but like I didn't realize, holy cow, I'm going to need all this money. But I was trying to do my bit as a South African, thinking, hey, this is 3 weeks, this is patriotic, we're going to do what we have to do as citizens, and then we'll be back to business. 3 weeks became 5, became 3 months, and I had got to a point in my growing business by that point where we employed just under 30 people. We had people who'd been in the business for 12 to 15 years, some of them. And if you're in business, you'll know what that looks like with promotions and salary increases. So we were running quite a significant I don't say top heavy, but we were running an expensive business for our sector and for what we did. So it couldn't have come at a worse time from a cash flow perspective, because we were actually starting to think we need to make some adjustments here. We need to reposition a bit to make ourselves more profitable so that we've got a little bit more surety within the business for a tough time. And of course, that was the exact moment that the tough time came. What then kept unfolding was this rampant anxiety and uncertainty, because we realized, okay, that we do need to start making changes. So it was half salaries for everyone, and our team were unbelievable. They supported us through that. It was no salary for myself. That, by the way, went on for 2 whole years. I only put money into the business and took nothing out for literally 24 months. And think about that for a minute. If I said no salary for 2 years, what you're going to do? And how will you deal with that? So there was personal challenges in having to deal with that. Luckily, in my younger days as an entrepreneur, I had listened to people, and that's where mentorship comes in, who said, hey, invest. So I had things to sell, and selling properties and selling investments that I'd made proved critical to save the business and talk about the miracle. Because you talk about a 7% drop in GDP, we went through like a 95% drop in revenue, and that stayed like that for 2 years. So the biggest challenge for me was I really, at the time, didn't have great mentorship. I didn't have people to turn to. I didn't have a big brother shareholder, for example, or investors to ask for help. So it was all me, and I also wasn't asking enough questions of people around me to say, what do I do with the situation? When is the right moment to tell staff, I can't do it anymore, I've got to retrench you? When is the right moment to start trying to plan events again? Because events like buildings, you don't plan them the day before. There is 22 municipal permissions that go into putting any public gathering together, especially when the sale of alcohol is involved or more than 100 people in an audience. And our whole business was baked around 5,000 people plus. So you can't just decide, oh great, the regulations change in October, we'll do events in November. It's too late. So we were now trying to grapple with, when do we start planning? Do we plan things for December? Do we do nothing? If we do nothing, might an event like Rage Festival, which was the very fabric of our business, might somebody else pick it up? Because we knew the Matrix had booked their hotels and accommodation anyway. So they're going to go and find whatever parties available to them. But now it's uncontrolled. It'll be a mess. We also feel like we have a duty of care having created this thing. So it was just complete uncertainty, anxiety, and just no idea where to turn. And I think, again, so many lessons were building for me in that time, and I'm sure we'll talk more, and I don't want to hog the mic too long. But I think the big initial thing was awful anxiety and uncertainty of when and what to do.
And that's the thing, because you're trying to make decisions. You have to make decisions. But there's so much uncertainty that you don't know how far your decisions will land. You don't know if you should make decisions for now, for a month's time, or for a year's time. And I want to come to you, Rahma. What form did your decision-making process take in an environment where the future is even more elusive than it usually is?
So decisions were a nightmare. I mean, decisions on a daily basis are already difficult to make when it comes to hiring staff, when it comes to planning. And like the building industry, you always have to plan for the present and plan for the future. So what we normally do is, you know your business and you know what you need to do on a regular basis. And then when someone asks you for something, you know how to respond. But during COVID, we had to have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. So what we did was we took all of our skills and we laid it out on the table. And we said, right, from design, from technical engineering, and from project management, and from building construction. What can we actually give people? And building compliance is the one thing that got us through. We took all our engineering skills of how to use aircon, how to make people healthy, how to make people feel safe back in their offices, and we just concentrated all our efforts down that little funnel, because that was the tiny little thing that we could sell, and that actually got us through. But what we did do was make a decision between, do I sell something new, or do I focus on the skills that I have? And I can tell you, I tried both. I tried to sell something new. I tried to go into the residential market because everyone was working from home. But I spent...
With some hindsight, because of course COVID was what they call one of these black swan events. No one would have anticipated it would have played out quite the way it would. So I don't think anybody was really prepared for what played out. But I think certainly having learned from it, I think the assistance that between the banking sector and government, the assistance that they sought to brought to the market needed to be brought to the market a lot quicker. That's the one thing. So I'm talking in specific things like the COVID-19 SME loan scheme, because it was actually it was highly underutilized, that particular scheme. I mean, the amount of money that was made available versus the amount of money that was actually dispersed, it was a fraction. And therein lies, I guess, the lead up to the answer to the first part of the question. And I mean, it's long been, I guess, a challenge between the small business sector and banks. And that is small businesses being themselves prepared for any eventuality and the requirements that they may have of banks by having things such as their own financial records up to date. Now, I know, I've banged on about this in a lot of these type of discussions, but generally speaking, and so I know there's plenty of exceptions, but in many cases, entrepreneurs obsess about what they do and what they're passionate about, whether it's events, whether it's retailing, whatever the case may be. And often, when the eventuality arises for the need for financial assistance, their preparation for that is not always that great. Because as banks, we require certain financial information from them. And I think if anything that the small business sector can take out, at least from a banking point of view, and the need to get assistance from banking in the event something else like that played out, is that please spend time making sure that your financial records are up to date so that when the requirement for assistance is required, you can hand them over to your bank and enable the type of decision that you need to be made for you actually gets made. Because we had many, many requests where, of course, people wanted the financial assistance. But as a bank, we couldn't do our job of determining the viability, or at least projecting what the viability of those businesses may be, understanding what they're going through right now. So it may seem like a little bit of an arrogant ask on behalf of the banks, because, of course, no one would have anticipated it played out as long as it did. But I think just having as a small business, your affairs in order to present to a bank is something you should always be ready to be able to do.
Oragma, what do you wish you had known?
That list. Oh, goodness gracious. I wish I had known that my credit score has got nothing to do with what Alan just said. And that list of documents, if I had just gone and done the inquiry like a month before, I didn't know it would take me 30 days to put those documents together, because I'm the most organized human being that I know, right? I've got my ID in a folder, I've got my tax clearance in a folder, I've got everything in a folder. I mean, my folders are beautiful, but I still didn't have the documents that the bank needed. And it took 5 of us in the office to run around and find it and phone a guy and, prepare, because they are very specific documents. And I wish I had just read the page, the inquiry page, and the form to fill out, because there were words on that page I didn't understand. And again, I had to go and Google. What must I do? Ask the bank, sit with them. That is a process for each and every specific item that they required. And again, a learning process. Do yourself a favor, just go through the learning now. And even if you don't need the money, do it now so that when you need the money, bing, it can just appear. Mm-hmm. That's what you want. You want that feeling of security that you've gone through the exercise, because the panic when you need the money is just, you don't need that in your life. And it's so easy. Just do it. Just do it.
Can I just add on? So, I mean, because I think doing it for the sake of the bank is one thing, But I think doing it for the sake of you as an entrepreneur, knowing what position your business is in at a point of time, actually is probably more valuable to you.
Because with that one piece of information, I could have had far better decision making in what I did over a 2-year period, because we were always waiting for something to happen, for some piece of good news that never came. So I think that was the one piece of information that, that's dreaming that I wish I'd known. The other things, I think, both speakers here have spoken very clearly about the need for a financial health check on your business. So I have the benefit that I did study accounting, and I worked in banking as well, and that was instrumental for me in my business. But not all small business owners have any background in finance, and it's such an important cornerstone of your business because it's the health check of your company. If you are, as an entrepreneur, whether it's a very small business, medium-sized business, not fully aware of what's going on financially with yourself as a business, not aware of how many available, you don't know what your cash flow forecast looks like, you don't know what obligations that you have coming up, then you are always running blind. And that's not a great position to be in. It's not a position that most big businesses are in because they have so many layers of protection. They weren't in the industry, and Bidvest Sanitation Services was 15 years ahead of them, had the distribution, and they didn't. So my first point is don't pivot too fast. But when you start to feel mounting pressure to a point that you don't know what to do and you actually aren't able to do anything, you do need to start to pivot. And I think we looked at 2 staff left. What skills have we got? We've got operational skills. What does everyone need right now? And the one thing that people did need was COVID-19 testing, and ideally at home. So we started a business called Nurse to You. At its peak, we were testing people on ships offshore off the Durban Harbour every day with our very sweet 50-year-old female nurse who was climbing 8 stories up a ladder and said it was a new lease on life for her. We were testing people at home in Johannesburg. We had a testing center at Bryanston Shopping Center. And that business, it only lasted 6 months, but it gave us desperate cash flow that we needed to see us through to the next step. And just as it was starting to be extremely successful, suddenly the taps were turned off. But that was the moment to pivot again and dive back into events, which was, the early parts of 2022.
I'm glad that you mentioned this point of pivoting and knowing when to pivot, and also knowing what your market is and what you are prepared for, because you might want to diversify, but going into markets and spaces in which other business had been there for years and they have more experience. Rahma, you and I, when we spoke last week, I asked you about going into home improvement because you would think that would kind of be, because we did have a home improvement boom, and you actually said that failed. So just talk to me about how you molded the business to kind of shape this for the shape that the world had taken now.
So I stepped back, and the 3 months that we were first promised COVID would last for, didn't last, and it went on for another 3 months. So we had cash saved up, we were very diligent, and then I thought, what, if I just skim a little, I can get through the next 3 months, and then the 6-month number hit, and I started panicking. And I thought, what, let me make another website. Let me start maybe going into home improvement. I'm an interior designer, I can design anything. But oh my goodness, I didn't know how to speak to people who had homes, and I didn't know how to address people who had different needs. And even in the sanitizer sector, we tried to sell sanitizer for businesses and homes. But again, I knew nothing about logistics, distribution, how much stock to keep, when to leave I knew nothing about trucks and delivery vans. And just as I got into something, I learned how much I didn't know. And so every time you try, and you just get disheartened by how much you don't know. You don't know how people navigate around their children at home. You don't know what makes them feel safe. Offices I can do in my sleep in 30 days in and out, but people's homes are a different environment. And it's that trick about do you want to get into an environment that you've never played in before? At the end of the day, we are working people to people. Who are the people that you're going to serve in that new environment, and do you understand them? It's not I thought it was, it's just another building, but it's not just another building. It's the people in that building I'm now going to serve. And can I serve those people? That is for me the fundamental question I need to ask myself whenever I go into a new industry. Sanitizing is easy, but do I understand that these are people with a health need now that I'm going to serve? And so that was just a question that either I gave myself a very strict timeline. If I'm going to do something new, I'm going to give it 30 days. If it fails, I let it go. And I forgive myself every time something doesn't work, and I move on and I say, okay, give myself a budget, give myself a timeline. I'm going to spend 10,000 Rand and 30 days on this thing. If it doesn't work, let it go and move on. You have to move so quickly to make a decision to let it go. Don't beat yourself up, just move. And just while you're doing that, keep planning on your existing structures at the back, keep making things work. Keep believing that when things do go back to normal, God willing, you will still be okay in the business that you started. Believe in yourself. You started that business for a reason. You have those skills for a reason. You know what you're doing for a reason. You have that passion, and you will always be the best at your passion. Greg is so successful because he lives inside his passion every day of his life, no matter what anyone says and no matter what comes his way. And the success shines through everything that he does. He gives me goosebumps.
Alan, from your lens, what characterizes businesses that survive and pivot from crises like COVID?
Good question. I think the passion is certainly one side of things. I think having the resources to see things through is obviously important, and also the ability to make quick decisions. So, so certain decisions were made by my two colleagues on the left with respect to their staff and their costs and trying new things. So I think that ability to think about what else could contribute to the sustainability of our business is critical. And then there's something that both of them have touched on that I'm not sure has been emphasized enough, I think, in terms of how they felt about its importance. And that was the access that they had to other people, in some cases in the form of a coach, that was helping them see things that perhaps they weren't seeing for themselves. And I think that can be critical because we tend to maybe become a little sort of fixated on what we're dealing with, and it may not necessarily open up our eyes to some of the other possibilities around ensuring our sustainability and our growth. And my sense is that you can't really overemphasize the importance of having access to someone else that can give you maybe a number of thoughts that perhaps may help you figure out where to pivot and how to pivot and when to pivot.
Well, let's actually talk about that, the importance of a network, because there's a common narrative that entrepreneurship is lonely, and I wonder if we don't romanticize that or maybe just exacerbate that challenge and not really looking into the people around us that can actually help us, Rahma.
So we were also, raised to believe that leadership is a lonely road and that it is lonely at the top. I mean, these are common things that people say on a regular basis that it all goes into your subconscious and you believe it. And every time you speak to someone, they don't understand you, and you try and have a conversation with someone and they don't get what you're saying, and you can't connect, right, with a lot of people that you have had the journey with up until this point. And every time you grow, you almost outgrow the people in your circle. And so it does get lonelier and lonelier and lonelier. And what you actually need to do is just connect with more people and connect with more people. And very soon you'll find that your vibe attracts your tribe. And so I got stuck in that romanticism of thinking, oh, I'm all alone and I can't do this and I'm going to have to keep Googling and keep finding my way and I don't understand. And the more that I tried to do something and failed, I thought, this is how the cycle of my life is going to continue to pan out. I'm going to learn something and get stuck and learn something more and get stuck. And I'm always going to have to learn the hard way. But the second I tried something different and reached out to a network, so I lost my whole network in COVID. I couldn't meet anybody. I couldn't go and see anybody anymore. And I started Googling online networks. And luckily I found BNI, which is a business network. And you would be surprised how many business networks there are out there. Banking is a network, like you don't realize. And the minute you start reaching out to other people, what it does to your understanding is it gives you another perspective. And so you start talking to the first and the second, and by the time you reach number 30, you realize everyone's got the same challenges. Everyone has the same struggle. Everyone's got a different perspective on your business, and you have a perspective on theirs. And so once you start sharing and letting people in, letting your banker in, letting your coach in, the amount of perspective it gives you on the fact that, oh, I was actually doing that right all along. If I just keep doing that, it will pay off. And it changes your life when you let people in. I wish I had done that sooner.
Yeah. And of course, Greg, I've noticed that you are very passionate about the element of mentorship. So just talk to us about that, how important that is, but also how do you find your tribe, even with your staff?
So I'll talk about mentorship first and tribe second, if that's okay. Mentorship, and I hope I'm speaking to lots of small business owners out there in the audience and online. Don't do it without mentorship. It took me 19 years of doing it. I don't want to say on my own because I had a business partner. I had parents who had been in business themselves who could give me advice. I had friends. But these are often emotionally vested parties in your journey. And the advice is not often given to you from a critical thinking perspective. And proper mentorship, and even better, paid for coaching, is one of the best investments you will ever make. I've only made it recently, the last year. In fact, it's only the last year that I have made those investments. I spent 18,000 Rand a month on coaching. And it is the best 18,000 Rand a month that my company pays for every month, because it is giving me not just someone to listen, but someone to listen who's got an armory of strategic tools, design flow thinking, critical thinking processes, ways to do sales, ways to do marketing, ways to test what you are doing. And I really can't emphasize enough the incredible role that structured, unemotional business coaching mentorship can have on your business. It will take you on whatever growth path you are hoping, and it will steepen that curve. And that is just fact. When you talk about finding your tribe, the other thing I'm very passionate about in business is culture. Businesses need to be led with purpose and with values. I can tell you that my business purpose is unforgettable goosebumps for fans and unrivaled triumphs for brands. I rarely come across other businesses where the people that work there, they've got even big businesses, glossy things in the reception about the values, and you go around to anyone's desk and they haven't got a clue what the values of the company are. Instilling culture into a business will make the job of attracting clients, attracting the right people to come and work alongside you, attracting the right talent, and getting the right people. It is far easier to incentivize people with purpose than it is with money. So that's not to say that sales teams shouldn't be money-hungry people. You want people who love money in sales. That's important. But you need to have a culture. You need to have a culture that is explained, that is re-cemented on a monthly or quarterly basis, that is baked into the way that you speak, that is in your email signatures, that is in the way you talk to each other. When you get culture right and your business leads with purpose, you will then find it very easy to find your tribe.
All right. Well, we are getting to the end of the conversation. Of course, we'll just have closing comments from our panelists, but also to our audience, please get your questions ready virtually, and also our audience here with us in the venue. You mentioned the challenge. You mentioned earlier the challenges between small businesses and banks, and because South African banks are seen to be quite conservative, Alan, and now with businesses, facing new challenges and needing more support, more money. How do you navigate that? Maybe you can touch on that in your closing comments.
So the first, if I can give people that are listening and in the room any advice, and I'm not trying to give Nedbank a punt, although we would love to be banking all of you, but go to our website, go to nedbank.co.za or go to simplybiz.co.za. There's a guide in there which we call the Essential Guide for Small Business. Now that will, I think, give you a lot of what you need to know about how to become sort of borrowing fit, what are the sort of formalities and things like that you need to think of. It's actually quite an easy read, so as much as it's referring to finances and I guess compliance and regulation, it's not burdened with too many sort of banking and regulatory type of terms. So hopefully you'll find that easy to navigate, and I would encourage everybody to go and have a look at that, because the quicker we can get to the point where small businesses can anticipate how to go about approaching a bank and what a bank is going to ask for, which this particular tool will give you, the better that we're going to be able to unlock the value that we can unlock. And the value we unlock as commercial banks is typically to help you fund and accelerate the growth of your business. So debt has a bit of a perhaps a bad reputation. Debt can be used for bad purposes, and one of those would be continually funding losses. But good debt is a form of leverage, and leverage is one of those things that actually helps the world perform and scale the way that it does, and is there to help you accelerate and fund the growth of your business. And if you follow what's inside that guide, you will place yourselves in a really good position to be able to get out of the bank the value that banks are there to provide to you. I think maybe the final point from my side has been a couple of things that I think have come out of this conversation. There's been a couple of references to when things normalize. I think that it would be potentially ignorant to think that things will ever be normal. We have undergone too many events over the last 4 years. I think part of going through those events has hopefully created a level of resilience and also created the ability of people to think in a more agile and nimble way. It's load shedding right now. In Cape Town recently, it was some of the taxi disputes that were taking place. We've had floods. We've had a whole bunch of things. And I think my advice would be anticipate that something will happen. That's going to upset the normal. And I think you will position yourselves in good shape to sort of wrestle with the eventualities that are going to be taking place going forward, as I think my colleagues on the left-hand side have been able to do.
Right. And I mean, both of you really have a new armor right now. And just, as part of your closing comment, Rahma, I mean, what forms part of that armor, and what advice would you give to businesses out there for, their building blocks for self-help strategies?
I think for me, the biggest thing is, and really just a thread that ties everything together, is preparation. Is what really is going to make you stronger. The thing that caused the panic and anxiety is that we were caught off guard and we didn't know what to do next. But if you're always preparing and you'll put yourself in the best possible position for anything that's going to come next. If you choose to pivot, you'll already have the tools at your disposal. If you know what the bank is going to expect from you, you'll already have those tools. And then when it does come to mentorship, there is something just phenomenally different about someone who has the experience. And something I've learned is everyone's going to give you advice. Everyone's going to give you their opinion. Everyone's going to say, you know what, when I did this, then this worked and that happened. That's wonderful. It might have worked for them in their industry at that time, at that fundamental moment. But you need someone who's going to look at you, your business, and your strategic Lego blocks of how your things specifically fit together and who they fit together with. Even when you partner with a banker, when you partner with a coach, those are partners that you are going to grow with you. When you partner with your staff, when you partner with business partners, those are all people you choose to take on your journey with you. So even that is part of research and preparation. So research and preparation for me has put me in a very good position to now make decisions and feel confident that I've made the right decisions for anything at that given time.
And just lastly from you, Greg, and I think from what I've gathered from you is that everything has changed how you lead. So maybe just touching also on, what should be driving you as a leader.
So I think with leadership requires, and it's very much preparation. It's about forecast. I think I led very reactively up until pre-COVID-19. So we kind of knew what we were doing as a business. We were lucky that we had great products that we'd created over time. And I led by dealing with whatever came up that day. And a big learning for me through coaching, because I didn't know this, somebody had to teach it to me. And again, I emphasize the benefit of a coach, is one of the first things my coach said to me is, well, what's your 5-year goal? I was like, well, I don't know, to be successful, Go, what's success for you? Define it. Okay, let's now make a 5-year vision board. Let's bake that 5-year vision board into specific 5-year goals. Let's bake those 5-year goals into 12-month goals. Let's bake those 12-month goals into quarterly goals. Right, what can go wrong? Think of all the things that can go wrong, right? That's the whole exercise. Banks have risk departments and economic forecasting departments. Why? Because they need to have views of what the future could look like within where they're trying to go, to then know how to deal with those, or at least be somewhat prepared. I don't know that any of us could have been truly prepared for COVID-19. But that aside, as Alan says, there are going to be challenges that come. And having goals, having an understanding of what your risks are as your industry, as your business, from a staff perspective, writing those down. There's a lot of material, even just online, if you don't have the funds to pay for coaching, that one can go and find. And the last comment, if you'll allow me a minute, I want to make, and it's something I'm extremely passionate about, is South Africa. We are small business owners, medium-sized business owners in South Africa, banks, and I think often as South Africans, we are angry, and we have every right to be so, and we feel like we can't make a difference because we're too small. And it's up to government, it's up to the banks, to make a difference. And the obvious one that everyone says, and they're right, is vote. The other thing is you can make a difference. You are already making a difference if you employ one person, if you employ 5, if you employ 50. But think beyond that and think about what strategic difference can I make as a leader, as an owner of a small business, to uplift somebody, to create a career for somebody, to challenge, to speak, to stand up and say, hey, I'm pissed off with what's going on, and I'm going to talk about it because I'm extremely passionate about this country. I'm a proud South African. I feel I have every right to be here. I don't get upset with my friends when they leave because I believe that there's going to be a turnaround here. It will come, and the opportunities will be here, and hopefully my dream is at that moment the brain drain will stop, and we will start seeing many of these talented resources come back with international experience. So please stay proudly South African and invest your businesses in South Africa. When you make money in South Africa, don't rush it overseas as fast as you can. I believe that we have opportunity here and it's going to change. And if we all get behind that, it will happen.
Absolutely great. Great words to end off the conversation. Of course, we are now going into our question and answer session. I do understand that we are running out of time, but we do have quite a lot of questions. I'll start with online, and do remember that there is a mic available for our audience that is here in person. I want to start off with you, Alan. Quite a number of questions for you. How does Nedbank assist startup businesses with funding? What is the funding criteria? That's just one of them. I'm going to list all of them. I do know that you also mentioned a site, so assisting startup businesses. But also another one that says, does Nedbank have a focus on, or Nedbank has a focus on which industries? And in addition to financing SMEs, what other support do you give SMEs? So besides a financial, I would imagine. And then how do banks assist businesses through the exit stage? With regards to COVID, many businesses that are bank assisted had to explore this phase. What measures are placed with financial institutions to help businesses going through this phase? Or is it individual business tailored advice? So how do you assist startups? But also, which industries do you concentrate on? And if there's other support that you offer besides financial, and how you assist companies through the exit stage.
Okay. So just on the first part around startups, and I'm going to be blunt and honest about this. Commercial banks are not well geared to provide startup funding. And I think it would be irresponsible for me to suggest that you can walk into the branch of a local bank and sit and think that they're going to be able to help you with the startup funding that you require to open up your business. The unfortunate reality is that there is still quite a large failure rate of small businesses in the early stages of, and that's part of the process, I guess, of people finding ultimately what's going to work for them. But the failure rate is such that it's actually prohibitive to provide startup funding to many businesses and still sustain your existence as a banking institution, because the credit losses unfortunately become too significant. So it is a problem. In fact, I had the privilege of being with the Department of Small Business earlier this week, where we pitched exactly the same issue as it relates to us as commercial banks. And so I think there's a bigger solution we're going to have to find to answering that, because there is no good answer to that right now, if we are absolutely honest with ourselves. Did you want to weigh in?
Just chip in on that, because I don't think banks are the correct outlet for small businesses, well, for new companies to go and get first funding. You know, ideas are typically backed first by private money. So, you know, if you've got a startup idea and the idea is brilliant, you know, there's the world of angel investor capital. You know, there's private individuals who do this kind of funding. There's businesses like Race Corp, who we know, and others that do that. There's crowdfunding. There's many other ways that I think there's more appropriate ways for startup businesses. I think banks become interesting when you start getting into scaling businesses that have got a bit of a financial base that the bank can use and rely on.
Exactly. So, I mean, our core competence is facilitating growth. To the second point, we do not focus on industries of small business. We want to bank all small business, irrespective of what the industry is. How do we support? So, of course, the two big pain points that we understand small businesses face is access to funding and access to markets. Access to funding is what we typically do. Access to markets, I mean, as Nedbank, we've created a new platform called Avo. I would encourage everybody to go to investigate it, but that is a way for you to set up your e-commerce environment without you having to worry and obsess too much around how you go about making that happen, and whether or not you believe you have the technical expertise or not. Avo is actually a great outlet for you to be exposing others to your environment. I've talked about the Business Essential Guides. Simplybiz.co.za is another great environment for you guys to go and derive value outside of banking, and that forms part of our sort of beyond banking strategy.
Assisting with the exit stage?
So that's an interesting one. So that would be dealt with on a case-by-case basis, because it depends on what the reason for exit is. Are you looking to wind down your affairs because you can't find someone to purchase your business? Or are you winding down your affairs because, in fact, you can't sustain yourself as a business? So it just depends on the scenario. There's no one answer to that, I'm afraid.
All right. There are quite a few questions for Rahma and Greg as well. Rahma, what keeps you motivated to sustain and grow your business, especially under this difficult economic situation? And also, just for the both of you, how do you source and retain talented staff as an entrepreneurial business? So, Rahma, what keeps you motivated? And also how you source and retain talented staff.
So what keeps me motivated is, believe it or not, I started Vortex Design only as a money-making vehicle because I'm very passionate about empowering women in any industry. And specifically in the building construction industry, everywhere I look, there are just men. Men are the engineers, the architects, on my building construction site, laying the bricks, painting the wall, pulling the cables. And I believe that if I give women the opportunity to pull that same cable, it's not a heavy-duty job. Why can't women are concentrated in the design phase to make things beautiful, and then they're concentrated when someone must clean up after the men have left my building site. And if we can just integrate better, I believe that we can be so strong together. But I do have fear built into this integration, because people look at me and they say, oh, the women are going to take my jobs. And I said, no, the women don't have to take your jobs. I want to build ecosystems where women can come in and the men who have been the tradesmen for so many years, hundreds of years, can actually teach women when they leave. Because I stand next to my painter when he's losing his eyesight. I stand next to my builder when his back is going and he can't bend over anymore. Where's he going to go? He's got 5 children and he's going to go to a SASSA card. We can be so powerful if we just work together. So that is what keeps me motivated. My dreams go far beyond my business. Entrepreneurs don't dream one dream. They don't build one business. They build multiple things that can help everybody work together forever. And those things are going to go on long after I've left my business behind. So for me, it is about building ecosystems and structures for people to be powerful together. That's what drives me. And the second question?
Staff. So how do you source talented staff and actually retain them?
So that's a funny story for me, you know. I would look at my business and say, what do I need today? And my phone will ring. I know it sounds very strange, but when you have got good energy and when you have got positive intentions for what you want, those things really just appear. They are attracted to you. But again, further to that, you need good structure. Your business needs to have powerful, strong structure. And I have very good HR assistants who I've invested money in, who attract that talent for me. You let the people who have those strengths do their job. My HR professional does her job. My finance professional does her job. My procurement professional does their job. My project managers do their job. I let go of the strengths. Even if I can do it, doesn't mean I must. I must let the people who have the strengths to be very good at what they do, let them do it and be my partners in my business.
All right. We have run out of time, but I hope that I can squeeze in a few more minutes. Greg, questions for you. If you were to give advice about how to start one's business, given your experience, what would you say is the first thing to do? And also just on retaining and sourcing staff, and also what kind of mentorship is available for the lower income based small businesses. So a question on starting one's business, what is the first thing to do? Also sourcing and retaining staff, but also mentorship that is available for the lower income based small businesses.
So starting a business, for me, it's all about product. You have to have a great product. There's no point in starting a business if you haven't got a great product. So the first thing that you need to do is invest in product. You need to understand, what is my product? Who is it for? What is the competitive environment around it? How will I be competitively priced? What will be my strategic advantages, or what will be my incremental benefits? And be careful of incremental benefits. If you get a chance, please write this down. Read a book called Blue Ocean Strategy. Fantastic book that talks about trying to get yourself out of swimming in the bloody red ocean to rather float free in the limitless possibilities of your blue ocean. And the blue ocean is where your product and service is completely differentiated from your customers. You have something that they don't, and you're able to deliver it at a point that is of high value to your customer from a price perspective. And there's amazing examples that the book will give you about businesses that have done that. So for me, it all starts at product. The rest, I think you're obviously going to have to find funding. You're going to have to find people unless you started on your own. Stay lean in the beginning, unless what you're doing requires some enormous investment. One can't start a mine by staying lean. But yeah, I think really it's product. You have to start at product. And when you 100% believe in the product that you've created, I think then you have the foundation to start thinking about opening a business. And the other thing I want to say is just check with yourself, because being an entrepreneur isn't for everyone. When you're an entrepreneur, you are nobody from nowhere. So when you work for, and no disrespect to our bank, when you work for Nedbank and you are Alan and you are the head of the small business, you can go to the Department of Small Business Affairs. When you phone somebody up or you pop a mail, they're going to reply to you. When you're an entrepreneur in your own small business, you're nobody from nowhere and no one cares. And that takes a certain amount of grit and a certain amount of, the Jews call it chutzpah, to fight through that and to stay motivated all the time as you remain nobody from nowhere throughout your career.
Right. And staff, how you source and retain staff, and also, yes, you can clap.
Thank you.
Staff and also mentorship for lower income businesses.
Staff, again, like I said, start right at the beginning of your business, or if you've got a business that's not new, take time. There are consultants, there's learnings online. Read Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. There's many ways to come up with your purpose. Please find purpose. If you find purpose, you've got culture. If you've got culture, keeping people, that's one huge job of keeping people. Obviously, financial remuneration is another. There's many things that make people want to stay somewhere, but I can't emphasize, find a purpose, write it down, make it short, make it mean something to you. It must resonate with your own reason of why you wake up in the morning. And the second little tip of advice I'll give you on finding staff, Rahma already clearly pointed out, use professionals. So if you don't have an HR service in your own business, use either virtual platforms, LinkedIn, PNet, etc., or an HR consultant firm. They can be expensive, but sometimes I find the money spent is the best investment because they find the right people. And on the topic of recruitment, we use a process called deselection. And if you put a job ad on LinkedIn and you get 200 CVs, like what the hell are you going to do with that? Now you've got to go and read those. You've got to try and weed through all of this mess. If there's some spark or diamond or jewel in there, there's people applying who don't even necessarily want the job because they're professional job hunters. So we use a process called deselection. And basically what we do is we put out a job advert, and the advert gives you very specific instructions of how to apply for that job. And we actually use WhatsApp because it's a simple tool, and we ask you to send the answer to 4 questions using voice notes of no longer than 1 minute each. What do we hit? 80% send their CV on WhatsApp. Delete. Because that person can't follow instruction. Then we've now got the balance. We now need to listen to the voice notes. Hold on, someone sent 2 voice notes. Delete. Some people sent 4 voice notes, but they weren't under 1 minute. Delete. Now we've got 12 people that we can actually assess who we know can at least follow instructions.
I can attest to that.
That's a
It
great
works.
answer, yeah.
It works.
All right.
Can I offer just a response? Because I know you wanted to also maybe touch on the mentorship side and how to access something at low value. And I'll give Greg the opportunity to respond to that. And I'm not suggesting that a relationship banker can necessarily provide, in fact, they can't provide the level of engagement that a mentor will. But what they do have, where the value of a relationship banker lies, is that they're exposed to other hundreds of businesses, where they've seen some businesses succeed, some businesses fail, and that level of knowledge can be imparted onto clients who work with a bank like us, where every client or every small business is being allocated a relationship banker. So tap into that as well. That costs you nothing other than what you're paying in your banking fees on a monthly basis. But maybe Greg wants to give a view on mentorship.
Yeah, I don't know all the platforms and tools that are available out there. I don't mentor people outside my business other than little bits of help and opinion advice to friends because I'm not a professional mentor. I use a platform called Action Coaching. They're a big global platform. You can have a coach for, I'd say, as little as 4,000 Rand a month. I understand that might still be an expensive proposition. But what I like about them is, yes, you have a coach, but the coach has got thousands of tools and a network of coaches behind to help deal with every eventuality. It's professional mentorship. And I really favor professional mentorship over going to someone you respect in your community and saying, hey, can you mentor me? Yes, you will get a level of value from that. It's better than no mentor, absolutely. Someone that you respect, that you aspire to be like, or you are impressed by, and if you can get them to give you some structured mentorship where you come with the questions, you come with the problems. You can't expect somebody else to say, right, please sit down and let me tell you everything you need to know. That's not how mentorship works. You come with the problems and you do the homework. And I really... So yes, there's professional mentorship, something like Action Coaching, which I can recommend. The other place to go would be, you spoke about these business support communities. The ones that I've had exposure to are like Young Presidents Organization or Entrepreneurs Organization. I know there's many, many others where you can go and join. You pay an annual fee or a monthly fee, and you get put into a team of other entrepreneurs, and you guys get to learn from each other. But again, there's tools that support your learning. So yeah, structured mentorship of any kind is what I recommend. I haven't got exact platforms to offer.
And it's baby steps, give yourself the space to take baby steps. I also tried to go for the big thing right in the beginning. I wanted to be part of a referred network. But even if you can only afford the 1,000 Rand a month, give yourself space to be referred up. Even one of the reasons I'm sitting here today is to say thank you to my small business Nedbank professional who sat at Woodstock Bank in Nedbank, and I could phone him with any problem I had, like the payment wasn't going through or I needed this to just happen faster. And he helped me every little bit of the way. All the coaches that I've had over my career from 2015 until now, they referred me to the next one, and I got referred up. The same in business. With the clients that we serve now, we serve big names like Capfin and Lint, but only because we got referred up. So give yourself the space to climb the ladder. Everywhere is a good place to start.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that. Do we have any questions with our audience that is here with us? All right. So how many hands do we have? 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. All right. Please try and keep it brief. ran out of time a long time ago.
Yeah.
It's on.
Good day. My name is Kutlana Smith from Medsol Consulting. My question is directed to Alan. What kind of investment options does Nedbank offer to SMEs?
When you say investments, are you looking to place money with the bank or to borrow money from the bank?
To place money.
To place money with the bank. So, I mean, I think in our environment, there's some fairly vanilla options. I guess it just depends on what you're after. So it depends, and it also depends on how liquid you want that money to be. So for many entrepreneurs, they require a level of liquidity, which means essentially that you can access that money at short notice. You can also decide you need some of it at short notice and you want to lock more of it away for sort of other big eventualities that may play out. So I think we cater for any of those requirements. So you can place your money with us for 24 hours and have it in 24 hours notice. You can have it real time. You can have it in 6 months. You can have it in 5 years. And the reality is that the sort of rates that you will attract, depending on how long and how liquid you need that money to be, will differ. But these days you can earn effective rates of up to 13%. And that's one of the upsides of a high interest rate environment. Obviously, there's other downsides in terms of what it does in stymieing levels of growth. And I'll be very happy to chat to you if you want a little bit more detail offline. But there's a ton of offerings. They're normally interest rate type offerings. They're fairly simple to access. You can access them digitally or through, again, one of the relationship bankers. But very happy to give you some of the detail offline.
Thank you. My question is directed to Alan. My name is Saloma Posa. Alan, for small businesses gathered here, what advice would you give to them, to soften the blow of high interest rates?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think hopefully, and the Nedbank house view is that we're sort of nearing the top of the interest cycle, or the interest rate cycle. So hopefully that is what plays out. We're also forecasting that interest rates will hopefully start declining during some point in 2024. It's always difficult to project exactly when this is going to play out, but also that could be upset. All we need is another big sort of global event to take place, and that could actually put a hold, or could even put interest rates under even further pressure. I guess, how do you sort of soften the blow of heightened interest rates? It really becomes obviously a cost thing. So there's only two ways you can go about dealing with that. It's either you sort of reflect on some of those costs that you may be carrying in your business that maybe aren't absolutely necessary. And one way of softening the blow is trying to eradicate some of those costs out. The other one, of course, is trying to sort of accelerate the level of income that you're generating, and that's a lot easier said than done. So I would suggest you sort of start with the costs. The other thing, of course, you could do to try and create at least some form of consistency as it relates to what interest you're charging is explore with your bank the possibility of certain fixed interest rates. So at least then you can budget because you've entered into a fixed interest rate arrangement with your banks. That only works for certain lending products. It doesn't work for all. But Stella, thanks for the question. That's the advice I'd give.
Good morning. This is Stanley. My question goes to Craig and is that Reg?
Rahma.
Yeah. Look, COVID-19 came and gone, or still is, and obviously it gave birth to a lot of they call themselves side hustlers. Some of them are, small entrepreneurs. But my issue there is these guys, they've actually never had an opportunity to strategize, to become creativity and innovation. And obviously they come and open accounts and subsequently their businesses fail. So I want to find out what advice can you give them so that, they don't have to fall on those pitfalls of failure because they haven't got time, they haven't had time to strategize and things like that. Thank you.
Okay. Sure. I need to try and fully understand the question. Is how to maybe step past making failures that we've made so that you cannot have to make those failures? Is that kind of what I'm understanding the question is? Look, failure is such a huge part of entrepreneurship, and the counter side of failures is learning and growth. So there's very few businesses that will proceed anywhere without failure. And I came across something in a book recently where it was a book called CEO Excellence, and one of the CEOs that was talking in that book said that they have a failure celebration process in the business. Each time they fail, and it was a huge listed American, each time they fail, they come down to wherever the canteen is, they stop what they're doing, they open champagne, and they drink and they celebrate the failure because they realize that they were bold. Fortune favors the bold. They pressed, they tried something, they tried to innovate, or they tried a new process or product or tool or whatever it was, and it didn't work. But they celebrate the failure because if they weren't failing, it means they're not pressing their comfort zone, they're not learning. So the response I have really is to say that you have to keep pushing and you have to accept failure. What can you do to mitigate more failure? I think reading is an incredible tool. There's so much in books or online learning, or what about risk, about failure, about how to create good businesses, about leading with purpose. There's so many ways. So I think it's about educating yourself, speaking to other business people that who have failed, who've been through failures. I think many businesses will often go through the same failures when they start and the same problems, and those I think can be avoided if one speaks to other people, learns, takes time to educate yourself. Some of the basic things about running out of cash flow early or not forecasting cash flow, that can be learned from the thousands of failures before. But if you're pushing, you're failing, and it's fine to fail.
And I think for me, I had to learn a lot of hard lessons. And there were many days that I was sitting on my bed sobbing because this thing is not working and everything I tried is not working. But what I had to learn is, what does failure mean to me? Is failure that I tried and it didn't work? Or is failure that I didn't take time to plan my cash flow? Or is failure that I don't understand the difference between sales and marketing? Or is failure that I had the book but I left it on my counter for 7 months and I didn't read it? What is failure to you? If you understand yourself, it all begins in here. And make sure that it's all about you. It's not about everyone's opinion. Oh, he failed. Oh, he tried. Oh, she didn't get this. She didn't. It's got nothing to do with other people. What does it mean to you? You have to make peace with how you failed. And most of the time you'll find that 90% of the things you think was a failure was just a learning. It's just learning. We're all just learning forward. And the other thing was to mitigate risk, I would say. For me, it's more about risk and not so much about failure. What we did very successfully, one was by accident, and the other one was when we saw the accident and how well the accident worked, we then planned for it. So one was to do strategic partnerships. So that's what banking is. It's choosing a strategic partner. But what happened by accident was we actually managed to, through networking and referrals, strategically partner with much bigger businesses than our own. So before you would think, oh, I'm a small business, no one wants to work with me. Oh, I'm a small business, what could I possibly offer? Oh, it's little old me, what do I have that nobody wants? But you'll find that if you just look in your circle and in your industry, you have some unique talent and product that someone else needs. And just by partnering with people, you can scale up. We've had the pleasure of partnering with a big company, Tsebo Workplace Design, that some of you might be aware of, and also a quantity surveying company. So those strategic partnerships, we learn from them now, because they've made 30,000 mistakes where we might have only made 300 mistakes. So that is a very powerful thing, to learn from people who have had companies for 30 years, and now you can open yourself up to their mistakes and their teachings.
Any more questions? One more. All right.
Yes. It's Silo from private education. I just wanted to ask Rahma with regard to the referrals and networks, to say also it refers to the circle. and say, how do then you encourage the small business to move away from the circle and go outside? Which says, does the circle and the networking eliminate the marketing strategy? And for Alan and maybe Greg, you can just also intervene on that one. The township economy has been disrupted by the large retail groups which are investing in it. Do you see a large number of SME coming to you asking for funding in that sector? Thank you.
So for me, a big lesson I had to learn during COVID, because before I was very blessed. I just got referred and someone referred me. So I didn't know what sales and marketing was. I didn't know what PR was. And so I learned for the first time in 2020 the difference between the two. I learned that marketing is going on social media and building credibility for your company. It is the painful process of making a beautiful advert that has your face on it, that has your company, that has a picture of your team, that has a slogan, that tells everybody what is your value, what do you stand for, and taking a photograph of the last job that you did. I had to learn how to walk around my building sites with my scarf on my head and the dust flying and take a little video and say, hi, I'm Rahma. Look what we're building today. I had to learn that all those things contribute to building my credibility. That's marketing. Taking photographs of my team. I have a team. People need to see that you are a credible company. That's marketing. What do you stand for? Do you align with their values in their company? They care about all those things. Sales is the network. How do you speak to people? Do you listen? Do you understand what they want? And how do you connect with their values and building a sale funnel for people to then refer you in their networks? So that is the biggest lesson that came out of sales and marketing for me as two different things.
Can I just chip in 2 cents? Sales and marketing to me is everything in a business. The other things are important, and you've got to have a sound financial base, and you need to have the right people. Human resources is important. But if you haven't got a great product and you haven't got strong sales and marketing, you will have nothing to account for and no people to organize around it. So as you're starting businesses or building businesses, take time to understand what is marketing, and Rahma's given some examples of what effective marketing is. There's many forms of effective marketing available, and sales is so critical to have the right people. Often in a small business, it's you have to be the spokesperson, you have to be the networker, you have to be the connector, knocking the doors down until eventually your business grows and you can afford other people to do it. So product sales and marketing for me are a triangle that sit on top. Everything else is there to support it.
And one thing before, sorry, Alan, is remember what you're selling. Coca-Cola, BMW, Nando's, they don't sell chicken and Coke, eh? They sell happiness, they sell driving pleasure. Just really think about who you are and what you're selling. And what are people going to buy? What do they buy from Greg? They buy the experience. So really, really give that some thought.
And then on the question, if I've interpreted it right, with respect to sort of funding need within the township economy in particular. So, I think it's a very interesting one because, of course, the township economy is made up of an informal and there's a very significant informal sector operating within the township economy as well. And I guess the challenge for banks, because of predominantly how banks think the way they do, is it's very difficult to deal with the demand that exists for funding amongst the informal part of the township economy, because typically the informal part of the township economy can't provide banks with the type of information that banks require to be able to make decisions. So I think we recognize that, and so we're rethinking how do we respond to the need that exists within the township economy. The township economy has also done a phenomenal job of organizing itself, so I know a lot of funds are raised through stokvel type mechanisms, and as banks we're sort of thinking about, well then how do we complement or compete with that? So we have to think differently around how we deal with that. We are in the process as Nedbank at the moment of just expanding our presence amongst our small business relationship bankers across the township economy. In fact, we've just deployed 20 additional people on top of the 500 people we've already got serving that market in the last couple of months. So I think we're trying to get to grips with how we can better serve the township economy because the needs are unique. And I think I was asked the question actually by the ministry on Monday around why do we think that some of the governmental schemes of issuing grants and soft loans into the township economy have not really worked or got scale. And my response is because there's a demand on those type of programs for the informal sector to formalize. And I don't think the informal sector is that excited about formalizing because it means a whole bunch of other things for them in terms of regulation and compliance, which they essentially don't have to get involved in now. But I know that's a bit of a long-winded sort of response to your question, but that's sort of where we're at and how we're seeing things for the time being.
Right. Well, thank you so much to everybody and for all the questions that have come through. I think we ran out of time at 11, but I think just the question and answer session being as long as the panel discussion is really a testament to how important this conversation has been. So, of course, to close off the conversation, Alan mentioned that we should maybe stop trying to think that things are going to normalize because things are different now. The world has taken a new shape. Big financial institutions like BlackRock are saying that there is a new economic regime. So things are never going to go back to normal. But businesses need to build themselves in a way that will be able to navigate the challenges that do exist and are nimble to all the changes and the shifts that are in the economic environment. So really, some of the key takeaways is be passionate about your business because there can be times when the money's just not there, where you're not getting a salary for 2 years. And also just get your resources in order. We spoke about sales and marketing just now, how important that is. But also just having the ability to be able to make quick decisions, but knowing why you are making those decisions and the timeline as well. And really also important in mentorship, the network that you have, and also attracting the right staff that will be able to build that passion with you, but also partnering with financial institutions such as Nedbank in terms of access to funding and access to markets. Of course, my vote of thanks, I do have to thank the audience that did join us online and also the audience that has joined us in person. Thank you so much for your engagements and also all your questions as well. I would like to thank our speakers as well. So just to get in your formal titles in here, thank you so much for joining us, particularly to Greg and to Rahma. They came from the coast, Gqeberha and Cape Town. You guys have the sand, we have Sandton. But thank you nonetheless for joining us. Really, really great insights. Thank you so much, Alan. And of course, Alan Shannon, the executive for small business services and private clients at Nedbank, Rahma Solomon, the founder of Vortex Design Solutions, and Greg Walsh, who is the CEO of G&G Productions. And of course, thanking our partner Nedbank for partnering with Business Day SME Matters. Thank you, everyone, for your time and your ears and your questions. We do hope that you have a good day and a good journey in entrepreneurship.